A lot of people wait for perfect conditions to start, but don't realize that starting is the perfect condition. If you can barely decide to take any action at all and peel your eyes away from your phone for just a moment, it's so much easier to beat everyone else because most people are overweight, they're distracted, they're poor, they have so few skills because it has never been easier to start a business, to make money, to get in shape. It's just also never been easier to do nothing. And so in a world where it's never been easier to do nothing, doing something becomes extraordinary. And you won't die. And if you do die, you won't care because you'll be dead. And so best case, you win. Worst case, it won't matter. There's this line that I heard David Goggins say on Rogan, and I can't remember who he was saying it to or what he said in response to, but he just said, "I'm David Goggins, bitch." And I remember him saying it, and I thought to myself, like, you want to be able to say that in the mirror to yourself and not laugh at yourself. Mm-hmm. And the only way that I can do that is know that when no one's watching, I work harder than when they're watching. And thinking about it like that has given me this persistent and ever-present scorecard or third party that's like, no one's watching, which means now you have to work because otherwise you're full of shit. Mm. And so it's this continuous reinforcing cycle of the me and other me holding the whip behind me to see how much I can take. But with each lash of the whip that I take, learning that I can take it and continue to trudge on. And so as long as you keep going, you bear witness to yourself of what you are capable of. Most people who claim to be perfectionists are not perfectionists. They're actually procrastinating because they're not doing anything. Right. And so it just is a socially acceptable label because the real perfectionists feel this sickness where they like want to itch their skin off until the thing's done, but they are trying to get it done. Whereas the perfectionist or the procrastinator uses that to say, like, I'm not sure, I'm just getting it right. But like the person who's an actual perfectionist, one wants to finish and is working every hour of every day on the thing and seeing progress towards it. Because if you don't know how your thing is getting better, you're not a perfectionist, you're just ignorant. This segues into one of my favorite ones, which is you stay in poverty until you learn the first lesson of poverty, which is 2 words, my fault. And so when I was younger, I was really angry at my parents, like many people are, right? Justified or not, doesn't really matter. I was very angry and I blamed them for the woes of my life. And I realized when I was 19 that these people that I hated, I was giving all the power over the fact that I wasn't the person I wanted to be. And I was like, well, it's their fault. And the idea that I had actually given these people that I hated power over my success was ultimately something that made me feel sick to my stomach and was what allowed me to point the finger of blame inwards and say my fault, and then at least take ownership over the fact that sure, maybe your dad didn't hug you enough, or maybe your mom wasn't present, or whatever it is, right? It's like, and like, I said this the other day, and it'll probably piss off a lot of your audience, so, we can put our soft earphones on. If you suffered from racial inequality, if you suffered from gender inequality, if you suffered from being born in Bangladesh, if you were sexually abused your entire life, you would be completely justified in the fact that you are not achieving the things that other people who didn't have those disadvantages have achieved. And I say this as a white guy who was born in America to a doctor father. I understand that. But to the same degree, you have the opportunity that Chris nor I have, which is that you can be an inspiration to people who went through the same thing and succeeded, despite those circumstances. Because I can promise that there is somebody who has had it worse and has done it better. And I think that one single point of proof, and there's a global point of proof that you can look for sure, but you can be that very local point of proof in your community or sub-community. And I think as soon as we shed that, that's I'm a big fan of power follows the blame finger. So wherever you point the blame finger is where the power follows. And
So it's like if you point it at the government has the power. If you point it at your spouse and say like it's their fault that I'm not in shape, it's their fault, they never let me do anything, it's like, well, you're giving them all the power. And so it's like until you're like it's my fault, it also becomes my responsibility. What is?
What if it's not your fault?
It doesn't matter. And like I can't run marathons because I lost my leg at birth. And either you can just never try, or you put the metal thing on and you do it anyways.
People only root for people who don't need it. Like the amount of times when I was on my lonely path where I was too different from the friends that I had, but not successful enough to be friends with the people that I wanted to be friends with. That's when you want people to root for you. That's when you want people to support you. Once you've already won, people are like, he's amazing, he's so good. But like, that's the time when you need it the least. And so you always have to be the person who roots for you before everyone else does. And it's usually a single clap in the auditorium for a very long period of time. It is a slow clap that's just you rooting for you. And that visual, I think, is one that you can kind of take because it is... People struggle to do things alone. And the path of the exceptional person is one of an exception, which means that you are not with other people. And rather than fighting that or bemoaning it, see it as an indicator that you're on the right path. Because if everyone else were cheering you on, then it means you're not in the right place, because it means you're just like everyone else, and that's not where you want to be. It doesn't matter whether I achieve all of my goals or I don't achieve all of the goals. In 3 generations, I'll be forgotten, and the only people who were naysaying against me will also be dead. And so then it's like, just do it for me. And then when I wake up every day, there's only one voice I have to listen to. And so a lot of people are like, man, he's so smart, but he just doesn't. It's like, well, then if he doesn't change his behavior and he's in the same conditions, he's a dummy. He's not that smart. And so if you are trying to battle the same boss over and over again, and you don't change what you're doing, and the boss keeps beating you, then it's not the game's problem. It's your problem. You are the problem. What's wild about the fear that people have when they're starting out is that they say things like, I have nothing going for me. I have no advantages. I have nothing to my name. I have no money. I have no network. I have no resources. But using Rory Sutherland's reframing, it also means that you have nothing to lose, which makes you incredibly dangerous. And I think people wildly underestimate how many shots on goal you can take when you have nothing to lose. Whereas when someone has something to lose, they have to be more and more selective about the shots they take. And so you have the perfect conditions for taking risk, because the worst case scenario is baseline, is where you're currently at.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that
your
means,
downside is this.
which means that it's like going to the casino and playing craps, but they say that you can just keep playing until you win. But people are afraid to roll.
It's better to change your environment than to even do anything else, because what happens is you eliminate all the triggers and cues that are associated with the habit that you're trying to destroy.
And almost every successful person that I have ever encountered has gone through not a month or a year, but many years of doing work without reward, where they have to do things that other people find boring, and they have to sacrifice things that everyone finds interesting, that most people want to do during that entire season of their life. And they basically sacrifice a season of other things that they would prefer to do stuff that they would not prefer to do because of the one thing they want most. And it just underlines the biggest lesson that I've learned in my life, which is that volume negates luck, is that you can try to be lucky and pick the one perfect thing and try and make it, but if you don't want to try and be lucky, you can just do so much work that you will brute force your way to figuring it out. Like if you do 1,000 podcasts, you'll be pretty good at podcasts, right? But if you try to say, okay, you're brand new, and all you have to do is make one perfect podcast, the problem is that you don't have the perspective from which to make a judgment to say what is good, because you have zero data to base anything off of. And so you're basing your idea of a perfect podcast on something that you've literally never done before. And so doing the volume gives you the perspective to then have the best podcast at number 1000 or 1001. But when you do 100 repetitions of something, the first 5 times you're like, wow, I'm so much better. But then like the difference between 5 and the next 95 times is what goes from being great to being a masterpiece. And like it's that next 95 that I think is what makes people world class. And that's where everyone falls off. And that's why most people aren't. And so you can't want to grow and also want to know everything you're doing at the same time. It's like the two beliefs contradict one another. And so I think that's a lot of the discontent that people suffer from is they want two things that are polar opposites. They want the really strong character. They want the easy life. Like one is the price of the other. You have a hard life to have great character. You have an easy life. You have shitty character. Everything came easy. You want to grow. You don't want hardship. Hardship creates growth. And so they want both, and you can't. Like it's wanting the Jordans without paying the price. And the price isn't bad. It's just the price is what it is. And so it's just, do you want the Jordans or not? And if you do, then don't lament the price tag. Pay the price tag and be happy you have the Jordans. And if you don't want the Jordans, then don't buy them. The best art is art where the artist makes it for themselves. And where you see commercial work is where a bunch of people are trying to make something for an audience. And so they're trying to like rinse and recycle stuff that actually solves no one's problems because no one is actually the audience. Whereas when you make it for yourself, there's thousands of people just like you who will have the same depth of understanding of it, but it feels selfish in the moment to make something for yourself. But when you make it for yourself, you actually make it for everyone.
So the 3 most common traits of hyper successful people that they looked at, and it was interesting because there's the influencer world wants to be like, you have to wake up at 5 or you have to do cold plunges or whatever the fuck, right? But the thing but there was actually very few that they all had in common. So number 1 was that they had a superiority complex. They thought they were better than other people and that they deserved more. The second is that they suffered from massive insecurity and feeling that they would never be enough. And third, they had impulse control. And so you've got this combination of people who are like, I want to do this big thing. So this big toward thing. And they've got this big away pain that's like, I'm never going to be enough. I always have to do more. And then they have impulse control that keeps them focused on the goal without seeing the woman in the red dress or getting pursued by her. And that like, so it's like shoot high, have a big thing that motivates, like have a big tiger behind you and stay on the path.